I know I've covered this game to some extent on the channel already, but since I have more or less pigeonholed myself into be a reviewer of some kind, I wanted to cover this game, give it a proper review of some description. So I hope you'll bear with me. Hello and welcome to a look at Defense Grid: The Awakening for the PC, a game that was made by Hidden Path Entertainment.
What seems to be the problem?
The plot
The aliens are
of
back, aren't
Defense
they?
Grid is that
Yes, well,
this
we can
planet
stay
has
pretty
been
calm
in
and
peace
serious
for
here.
years and years and years, thousands of
Precisely why
years,
I was downloaded into
and
this
suddenly
computer
the aliens are back,
1,806 days ago
which would
to
indicate that
assist you.
the aliens have been
I
around
was watching
before.
your channel, you know. I've waited so very long.
Your task is to re-enable, reactivate the planet's defense grid,
Your name is Raspberry.
assuming
Just a
it
delightful
works at
plastic
all,
flavor.
because it's been dormant for so
Boring, a
long.
few cobwebs
And
seem to have built
uh,
up over the millennia.
activating
But
said
first
defense
things
grid is
first,
the only way
I
to
dare
ensure
say
the
a bit of
planet's
practice
survival.
wouldn't hurt us all.
So, no pressure. Um yeah, Defense Grid is considered by the developers themselves to be a
I
strategic
understand
game,
putting down
which it is,
towers
but they also
it will deplete your
themselves call it
resources.
a tower defense
That's what they're bloody well
game,
for, isn't
which
it?
is what it is known as, of course. For those who may not be aware of what the definition of tower defense is, for some
They're
reason,
becoming more power cores.
it's in
Anything you
concept
tell
very,
them,
very simple.
they'll run for
You
it.
have a
Destroy
path
them before they get past the perimeter,
some
though.
description
And they'll bring
where
trouble.
enemies of some description
If
will
I ran out
usually
of power
wander,
cores,
drive,
I'd shut
fly,
down.
row, whatever they do, and you have various different towers that you can place, build, construct, whatever it is you do, in order to shoot at whatever is moving
Let's
in
make a
whatever
few
way
drones on your
towards
education.
whatever
Sit back
destination
and
they
observe.
might need to head to. So the towers will go whoosh whoosh or bang bang or whatever else they're doing in order to stop those individuals of whatever type they might be. Was that explanation more confusing than it needed to be? Most likely, but I had fun saying it.
Oh, I should mention that there
Anyway,
is an upside to their
tower
armor.
defense. You
The
put
more
towers in
they
the way of
destroy, the
stuff
more
trying to get
resources
from
I
A
can
to B
harvest from them.
to prevent them from getting between A and B. And if you succeed in doing that, you are hero. And if you fail, you're scrub that needs to learn how to. Nah, never mind. You get the idea. I hope you do at least. If nothing else, this tutorial, which is the first mission of the story of Defense Grid: The Awakening, should keep you right. In a Defense Grid, you have an AI helping you, which is basically the voice of the Defense Grid, and it is trying to guide you and assist you and give you hints and tips and whatnot, even though there's not much hand holding. You could say that if you are used to playing games of this type, that it is a bit hand-holdy, but for players who are not familiar with the game type at all, it is very, very well done. The first few missions setting you up to the concept of what tower defense is and what the objective is and how you control your side of things, which of course is to place towers. The gameplay objective in Defense Grid is to keep the AI functioning. As you can see on the screen, the top left side, there's this core housing with a handful of cores, I'd say 24 of them, which the aliens will try to steal, and once they are in possession of a power core, they will head for the exit point. If they manage to steal all the power cores, the AI will shut down, and yeah, you can possibly imagine that the AI that's defending the planet shutting down may not be particularly useful. So ideally you want to make sure that you preserve as many of the power cores as possible, even though technically you only need to preserve one on any given mission to complete the mission. As you progress through the different missions, you will unlock access to new towers, and one thing I fully enjoy about this game is that it has a very good habit of, once you unlock a tower and see it for the first time, to give you enemies that that tower is particularly good against, so you get a feel for what the tower can do and should be used for, but also just as important, what it shouldn't be used for, because knowing a tower's weaknesses is just as important as knowing a tower's strength. The first tower you get access to after the machine gun tower is the Inferno Tower, which is basically a humongous flamethrower. Not particularly strong against individual enemies, but against packs of enemies, it is very, very effective, because after they have been flame grilled by the tower, they will burn for a while. And that damage over time effect, I have to admit, has saved my hide on certain missions more often than I like to admit. Yeah. Let's go over the interface to make sure to get that covered. Top left corner, you have your resources. Your resources are spent on building towers and later on upgrading towers, and the more resources you have available, the more stuff you can build and or upgrade. The way you gain resources is by destroying aliens.
Remember what I meant to tell you now.
The AI is capable of recycling certain parts of the aliens once destroyed and convert them into resources, and of course that is very, very useful. Just waiting for the cut to take place. There we are. There's another way you gain resources, and that is basically a sort of an interest rate you are gaining from having resources. As long as you have one power core remaining in the power core housing, the AI is able to extract further resources from your stack of resources. So in that way, as I was saying, it's sort of an interest rate on your available resources. So spending them as late as possible is often beneficial, but of course you don't want to spend them so late that it is too late. When it comes to building towers, I would say by and large it's better to have them and not need them than need them and not have them. Underneath your resources you have the status of the power cores. Green means they are safe in the power core housing. Amber means that they are on the playfield, either in the hands of an alien or floating back towards the power core housing. And red means they are lost. You don't want to see all 24 being red. That is not particularly ideal for your progression in this game. Top middle is your recon radar scanner kind of thing, which will identify the different composition of aliens coming in the different waves on the different levels. The aliens are color-coded. Green enemies are usually weaker enemies. Amber enemies are slightly tougher enemies, shielded enemies and the kind of stuff. And red enemies are usually mini-bosses, which can take a significant amount of pounding, but of course the amount of resources you gain are directly related to how difficult an enemy is to take down. Not necessarily from a pure hit point of view, but there are certain enemies which move extremely quickly, and they of course are considered to be a huge threat due to their speed, and taking those out will give more resources than other simple, just plodding along slowly along the path kind of enemies. The scanner's purpose is
Already looted most of the cores. We have to reclaim
more
what is still
important than
open
it
on
may
the base.
initially appear, because
Going to be a close thing.
not only do you see what you're currently facing, but you also see seeing what is coming up. Destroying enemies that or aliens that carries the power cores is what you want to do, of course. But as the power cores are floating back, they can be picked up by other aliens, which means, of course, they will have a much shorter path than reaching the power core housing in order to pick up a core, and then they will turn around and head for the exit immediately. Because your towers tend to target aliens carrying power cores above everything else, or before anything else, I should say, you can have a sort of destroy an enemy, see a core getting picked up by another alien, that alien gets destroyed, then you have another alien picking the core up, and yeah, you can see the cores exiting the level rather quickly that way. So keeping an eye on the scanner to see what's coming, and try to focus on what is currently on screen to make sure that that scenario doesn't occur, is also a very important aspect of the gameplay. The various different aliens you are facing comes in various different compositions. I was mentioning the color coding, but of course you also have walkers, which are single enemies which are quite strong. You have swarmers, which are groups of enemies which, if they reach the power core housing, tends to leave you 10 or 12 of them at the same time. And then you have things like spawners, which will spawn enemies as they move along the path, and things like that, which can become rather interesting and also a bit frustrating. This level will showcase another type of enemy, which is the flying enemy, flying aliens, I should say, and they are somewhat unique. First and foremost, they can only be engaged by certain towers. Early on in the game, the machine gun tower and the cannon tower, which you get access to on this level. I was saying earlier about the game giving you enemies that your new towers are good against, and that is definitely the case for this mission as well. But the flying enemies, if they reach the power housing or power core housing, they will steal a power core and it is lost immediately. Even if you manage to destroy the alien carrying a power core, the power core is lost. So ideally, of course, you want to prevent that from happening by taking out the flying aliens as early and efficiently as possible. There are possibly a few things I have left out or missed out on, but the game is very good at explaining new mechanics, new enemies, new towers, and that kind of stuff. So I also need to cover the technical aspects, of course, and reach some sort of conclusion before the end of the video. So let us talk graphics first. Considering the game type and the age of the game, it is a game from 2008. Even to this day, I think the graphics look amazing. The level of detail is quite high, and there's definitely been a certain amount of care concerning making the graphics look as crisp and clean as possible. And you could argue, I suppose, that these aliens, some of them at least, could look a bit more exciting, but every other graphical aspect of the game is excellent. The towers look amazing. You can easily identify what they are, what they do, and their engaging effects are very satisfying to look at. The gunfire and cannon fire, laser beams, all that kind of stuff. The tone may not be for everyone's liking, but the outright quality of the graphics is undeniable, and as I said, for its age, still holding up, I think is absolutely excellent. When it comes to the sound design, Well, before we get into that, there's my favorite quote coming up, and I just want to share it with you.
There's no stun setting on cannon fire.
So love that quote. The sound design is just like the graphics, absolutely excellent. The different sound effects are
Apparently we're in the middle
very,
of
very
a
satisfying. The
trying
gunfire, the
operation.
cannon fire, the laser beam fire, the infernal flame throwing effect, all of it sounds excellent. I don't think there's one sound effect in this game that I don't enjoy fully. This, of course, leaves us with the narration. The English narration is done by Jim Ward, and may I compliment Jim Ward for his performance in this game, because it is enough impersonal to signify being an AI, but also gives you a hint as to the fact that the AI was actually a person at one point or another, and he still retains some sort of personality despite still being an AI. And I think the voice acting is excellent. The choice of voice is excellent. The choice of whatever concerning the voice is absolutely excellent, and the voice performance gets absolutely top marks. The gameplay, well, the gameplay is tower defense. If you don't like the gameplay style, then this game will do nothing for you. But if you do happen to like the gameplay style of tower defense, you can't possibly go wrong with Defense Grid The Awakening if you are not already aware of it and own it. It is available on Steam for about £6 for the base game, and the various DLCs that you may opt in to purchase or not. But the base game gives you an awful lot of content. You get the story mode with its own missions, and each mission also have various different challenge modes where you can try to beat the game with only having one core, only using gun towers, only using whatever else it might be, and the tougher enemies and that kind of stuff. So even though if you are considering getting this game, even if you're only getting the base game without the DLC, as I said, there's an awful lot of content for the money. And when it comes to tower defense games, which is something I normally can take or leave, Defense Grid The Awakening is an absolutely excellent tower defense game, and even to this day, 14 years after its release, for me, it still stands as one of the best ones ever made. And I don't think I can give it much higher praise than that. So on that note, thanks for watching, take care, see you next time, bye bye for now.